Angela Aycock, thank you for joining us.
Well, thank you for having me.
Really nice to see you, and I'm really sorry we can't have you here with us, which is inspired by your poem By Heart by Thomas John Carlisle.
Yes.
Now, I understand that you found this while you were going through your mother's affairs, and it was torn from a newspaper and then onto card.
Yes.
But,
yeah.
So it obviously resonated with her, but how did it resonate with you?
I think the first time I read it, which was obviously when I found it, it totally sort of, I connected with it. It sort of made sense to me. It's just kind of stuck around since then, and has almost become more and more meaningful. Moved around a lot, finding a new space, putting your familiar objects into that space is a really lovely thing to do anyway.
You moved to New York in 2003, didn't you?
Yes.
I know you travelled extensively between that. Has that dictated how you use pastels? We know that you're a member of the Pastel Society. You're a very respected member of the Pastel Society and award-winning. Has that process of moving from one space to another changed your process with pastels?
I think there are two answers to that. One, I think generally speaking, if you use any medium for long enough, there's a natural evolution, and that certainly has happened. I don't know if it's as a result of moving. I think the moving around itself has certainly, obviously, how can it not, influence my work, to see the world with a different perspective, and it opens you up, and, you start to think more laterally. And I think that's been the more influencing part of changing my work.
It also make you, because it kind of would for me, does it make you look at the objects in a different way as well?
Totally, yeah. I mean, just taking a jug that you've had forever and putting it on a different shelf with a different background, and then putting it back next to something else which is totally different. You suddenly see something in a totally different light. It takes on a different persona. And for example, when I was living in Japan, I'd sort of poke around all the flea markets, which I absolutely loved, and then I'd find these objects and I had no idea what they were, but I just loved their shape, or I was intrigued by what they were. And again, that's sort of, you're finding out about something, about a culture, you're finding out something new. And then you take that back to your own space, your home space, and then you're putting it next to that jug that you've had forever. And again, it takes on a different sort of persona.
Do you start with colour? Because I'm often drawn to the spaces that you create within your lines, within your work lines. But actually, initially, what hits me is your colour palette.
I think colour is totally instinctive. It's very important to me, obviously. I might be walking in the park or something and see two people walking along, and they'll have a pink sweater and a red sweater, and I'll just think, oh, those colours are, just delicious. And I'll kind of Kodak that moment, I don't know where I'm going to use it, but it's in there. And often, as with all artists, it comes out subconsciously. And art, like Rothko, art, colour is such an emotional piece.
Your colour matches, very, very layered. How does it work?
Yes, you're right. I mean, there, sort of every part of a painting, there are layers and layers of pastel. And that's one of the key points that I really love about using pastel. You can really build up the texture and the layers. But with regard to colour, sometimes, a pot can have 5 or 6 different colours before I know what it is. And it's also, judging that pot stroke colour against the rest of the painting. It's a conversation, it's back and forth. It can be, 5 different shades of yellow before I get the right one. And then there's just that moment where it's like, yes, it's that sort of sweet spot of, those are singing now.
This body of work particularly, I know you've worked very hard on it. I find it personally very reflective and very quiet. The process itself sounds very therapeutic.
Absolutely. I mean, sometimes when I'm drawing, I feel like it's just this calming sensation comes over me. I just feel, I'm sure you're an artist, Davy, you know, you must feel that.
You can get lost in that. And that's where the joy is, actually. It's not just about the final product. I was reading an article on you recently. You mentioned about your love of pastels, how you love being very close to the pigment itself, and that's why you use it. Is that true? I mean, why pastels? Why not oils, acrylic, watercolour?
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. You know, there is an immediacy with working with pastel. You're not, you know, you just pick the chalk up and you can just go right to it. I had one sort of lovely epiphany. I went up to see Unison Pastels in Northumberland. Dan Hersey, who is the owner there, showed me into the shed, and there were just these big vats of pure pigment, and it was like this primeval moment for me. You know, I mean, I just, it was just so wonderful to see this intense color. In the States, I work with Diane Townsend's Pastels. You know, she told me how back in the 70s she was living in a loft in Soho and found these sacks of pigment outside, thrown out on the street, and she sort of, you know, poked around. She's an artist herself, and there happened to be an Italian recipe for making pastels with it. And since then she has been, you know, stick by stick, as Unison do, rolling every pastel. I met her, I guess about sort of 15 years ago, and we've become very good friends now. And when I first met her, I said to her, oh, my favorite color is 25D, which is a lovely citrusy yellow, which you'll see in lots of my paintings. And she said, oh, I'm going to tell you a story about that. And there had been a show of Jacqueline Kennedy's outfits when she was in the White House. And there was one citrus dress there, which she absolutely loved. And she said, I'm going to make a pastel to match that color. And I said, I have the book. I know which dress you're talking about. So there's this total color connection. You know, we just had this color moment, and, you know, there's sort of, you know, and that's what color's about.
Beautiful story.
I mean, she's a real alchemist. You'll see in some of my paintings, there's a kind of shininess to some of them, like an iridescence to them. Yeah, wow. That's because she's always experimenting. You know, she is definitely an alchemist. She took the eyeshadow powder you get, which has sparkle in it, and she's been mixing that into the pastels. It's very exciting.
Actually, you're right. Some of the colours do have an iridescent quality about them.
Yes.
And some of them are very reverse flat. So sometimes your backgrounds makes those iridescent colours stand out, and that's what I really love about it.
Yeah.
You still got the poem. You still got the poem by heart.
Yes. And, you know, the poem is just really one reference point. I don't think it matters if you're an artist or a writer or a sculptor. You know, we all express through our medium, and we all take different elements from what other different people have said. I mean, I just want to read you something. This is from Joan Didion's book called The Year of Magical Thinking, which is a wonderful book, as I'm sure you know. And she said, I write entirely to find out what I'm thinking, what I'm looking at, what I see and what it means, what I want and what I fear. And I think there is an element in working. I mean, I definitely think for me, there's a reverse understanding of when I finished a piece, I'll be thinking, oh, that's what I was thinking. That's what I was trying to figure out. And you don't know really what you're doing when you're in it. It's totally instinctive. It's a very organic process. And for me, it's important to do that, because I always say I try and leave my brain out of the studio. You know, I just try and get to that place that thinking stops and you're just working on processing all the information that we all take on, or just generally speaking. But I thought that was a really lovely quote.
Absolutely love your use of colour, and I love the fact that they are, even some of them that are sort of bright and vivid colours, there's still a quietness within them. Your collectors and clients are really drawn to not only your composition or the colouring, but also a very contemporary way of looking at pastels, and sometimes also about your perspective you sort of cut things off when you least expect it. You've got a rim at the top of a rim of a jug, and then all of a sudden the top's gone. Yeah, I love that, because it's almost not predictable. But why do you do that? I mean, do you work to that specific composition, or do you just feel that it's necessary to cut that table leg off or snip that arm of the jug off?
Yeah, it's something that happens while I'm working on a piece, and I think what I'm trying to do with that is number one, it's a way of abstracting the pieces. So yes, it's a still life. Yes, they're objects on a table or in a room. Mm-hmm. But they're more than that. They're conversations, they're shapes and their colours, they're positive forms, negative forms. And I think by chopping a flower head off, it makes you look at the stalk. It makes you look at the way the stalks are a form, not a plant stem, but a green line that's bending in a different direction to another green line on a red table, or so that's what that's speaking to.
I'm thrilled that for so many years, for representing you, we're finally having a solo show of your work. I'm absolutely thrilled. Yeah. And I'm grateful of the opportunity to be able to do this in the current situation.
Yeah. And also, I know. We started talking about this when we were just newly into COVID, and who knew? I mean, what a time for self-reflection.
It's our first solo show with you. We've been representing you for many years, but I'm excited because it's our first solo show with you. It's our first solo show of 2021. But actually, I'm glad in those times on a personal level that I have actually been able to see you. You have been able to come over, and we have had a chat on the beach.
Yes.
So I'm very grateful for those moments. I'm incredibly grateful. Yes. I'm really looking forward to putting the show on. And thank you for talking to us today.
Thank you, Davy. Thank you for all your support and enthusiasm. And it's always so great to see you.